everybody. Today I am sitting down with Joanna Smith. So excited to talk with you today, Joanna. Can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. My name is Joanna Smith. I am thrilled, excited, and really committed to seeing students expand and be exposed to science, tech, engineering, and math in a fun way. Our company is Daley Smith STEM, and what we do is get students involved in STEM through roller skating and math, music and math, and coding and math. Very different approach to tech and education, but it's one that has been holding up strong and has had children get involved in some very complex and complicated fields.
So cool. And I'm such a supporter of this too. I know that actually, let's talk about how we met because I think how we met is really cool.
Yes.
We went to an e-commerce women's running meetup here in New York City. We're recording in New York today in the East Village. Yeah, we met for the first time in this run club and it was a 5K run. You were in the running group, as was I. Very impressed by you running the whole thing. And you were talking to me a little bit about your organization and what you are working on, your mission. And I am so in favor of seeing more diversity and a broader representation within STEM fields. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to start? It's a nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the story of the founding of your organization.
Sure. First off, my background is in geotechnical engineering, and that simply is short for dealing with everything below grade. So structures, buildings, off water, off land structures, the whole work. I had worked in Germany, in Mexico, in the DC area, New York for over about 15 years, I would say, doing geotech or civil engineering projects. One of the biggest projects I did was the Hunts Point project, a $1.6 billion project, led the geotech exploration on that.
Cool.
And what I saw over the duration of time was a lack of diversity over 15 plus years internationally, right? When I was working with the U.S. Army Corps in Germany, in Wiesbaden, I was the only female and the only person of color again. And I said, okay, there has to be something that we can do here, okay? This is not a U.S. situation. This is something that has kind of even found its way overseas.
A global issue representation issue. Yeah.
Yeah. And so my question was, how do we combat this overall? And the only thing I could come up with for the most part was combating this from a K through 12th grade level, specifically, especially that K through 8th grade. I saw that a lot of companies and programs had a lot of emphasis on the high school space, but by then, especially in minority-based communities, I would say, they already have made up their minds that they're not good at something.
Especially if that seed is planted when you're really young of oh, math is hard or science is scary, then it's really hard to combat that going into high school when you're also facing puberty and also trying to make friends and you have so many pressures in high school and then add on to that trying to rewire your brain and rewire how you view math and science. That totally resonates, makes sense to me to try to foster a friendly attitude toward math and science and curiosity and excitement when you're younger.
At that younger age, yeah.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. And so, when I started talking to a lot of the folks that were in leadership for the most part at some of the companies that I had worked with, and it was just really hard to see that, of course, I don't want to say of course, but it wasn't something that was a priority. It was just kind of look, we've been living our lives, our kids are good, everyone else is fine, this is the way the world is. I thought about just the opportunities that I had because, I went to schools in Katona, New York, and I saw how people live outside of, I guess, the everyday mundane type of neighborhood that you would usually grow up in.
Tell us about the part of New York that you went to school in.
I went to school in Katona.
Okay.
It is about 10 minutes away from Bedford Hills, if you know where Mount Kisco is.
Is it more suburban?
Yeah, suburban. Okay. Our school sat on 100 acres of land.
Got it.
We had everything, right? From black box theaters to hockey rinks on site. You
so a lot of resources.
Many resources, beautiful. Definitely, I would say more diverse as well. At the time, there were about 300 students in the upper and the middle school. And there were 15 friends of mine that were there as well. So it wasn't necessarily, I would say, that diverse but it was enough for us. But I saw a lot of things like folks that had their own horses on their land, and still living in New York. I mean, Katona was still in New York. It wasn't like 3 hours away. It was
Yeah.
just 45 minutes taking a
But
train
it
ride.
feels like probably a very different experience than
Oh, most
maybe
definitely.
some of the kids that are
They're
going to
living-
school here in the city.
Right, in the city. And so when I asked, like, hey, what do your parents do? They're like, yeah, they own all the drips in Bedford Hills. And I'm like, oh, your parents are having fun. And this is, so it opened me up a little bit more. I would say also one to entrepreneurship, and then to know that these were possibilities that were available for everyone upon just having a different approach or exposure to what is out there versus like, oh, I'm going to be a football player, I'm going to be a basketball player, or, hey, I'm just going to do a job that may not necessarily be STEM oriented, because statistics have shown that career paths are definitely 80 to 90% more lucrative, I would say, in STEM fields rather than not. And so the question is, why are you being cut out, or why are you cutting yourself out, or why are you not being exposed to this type of opportunity? I did see, upon having conversations with some of the folks that were a little higher up, over the east and the northern parts of the companies, it just wasn't really a priority. And I said to myself, okay, we're going to have to do something about this, right? Because you're going to be the one to be the liaison between these big organizations and your community, and making that happen.
That's so cool. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's good. And it was great. It's been great. We've definitely had billion-dollar revenue companies be kind of like, I would say, the fulcrum of where we would come and kind of visit with our students, and they'd go to see the Second Avenue subway project and Vanderbilt, and I mean, you name it. But it's just about expanding their mind to what is available for them as well, instead of not knowing about it at all, right? Because that actually like is an option that you could live your entire life. I mean, yes, we have the internet and all of that, but the level of exposure that you're getting, because if you don't know these folks, they're not going to be like, yeah, sure, you can come to my company, come hang out.
Yeah. And it's also very different, I think, seeing representation in media. I mean, that's also helpful, but it's different than like someone that you know personally in your day-to-day life, a real person that isn't a movie star or an actor, or, someone that is just like so far removed because they're on TV. So I think like it is really important to have that exposure to real people living their lives. You're seeing them every day, working real jobs.
So that's kind of how I got into the Daley Smith STEM program, and how I was able to kind of bring life to it. I think about it as something that was kind of like formed, and then it took me to...
And what year was this?
So December 2020, like the pandemic, I think shifted, right? Like the pandemic shifted so many things. In 2020, I think that was the time, December 2020, that's when I filed for the not-for-profit. And I was like, yeah, this is exactly what we're going to do. And then the next year in May 2021, we got the 501c3 status. And so we started working with different folks. Our goal, forgot to say that, is 500,000 students in the next 5 to 7 years. And so that's about 417 students every single day. That's, of course, the working days. So 20 days out of the year, out of each month, rather. And it's just been really a really great opportunity to serve and to work alongside and to see the minds kind of open up.
That's so cool. So can you explain the name a little bit? Because I know Smith, your last name's
everyone asks
Daley.
that question. I kind of like always get over that. I'm like, oh, that's not that big of a deal. But Daley, Daley, always have to spell it out because, the regular spelling is different. But Daley is my mother's maiden name.
Okay.
Who was actually here with us in the studio.
Yeah. We'll talk to her in a little bit.
Yeah. So Daley's my mother's maiden name. And I was just looking at it as just constantly doing what you need to do on a regular basis. Smith is my surname, and blacksmiths, for the most part, are usually the folks that are doing the hands-on work with different materials and such. And so it was just a combination of my mother's maiden name and my surname, my dad's, or our name, rather, right? And putting that together, as in working with your hands and also your mind on a daily basis, and also just continuing the legacy of the education, the programming, and also just exposure, I would say, that my parents gave me is what I'm basically giving back to my community and the people around me.
That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done with commercial organizations or like companies
Oh, for
in
sure.
support of your nonprofit? Yeah.
Definitely. So some of the work that we've done has been in the Pennsylvania area, all the way out in Trinidad and
Oh,
Tobago,
wow.
here in the Brooklyn area, Williamsburg, Jersey. So just to name a few. And what we do with these different organizations and different companies, and also the school districts as well, is we offer our music and math programs, which is a blend of these universal languages, very different. Always love to use the word unconventional, right? Approach to science, tech, engineering, and math. The students use a program from Northeastern University. It's escaping me right now, which is kind of annoying. But basically, they code using Python for some of the beats to create for instrument sounds and all that. And then they also use the newly developed music and math algebraic equations as well to solve these problems and to create a solution as to blending these basic aspects of math and music together. So we've done that. We've done a robotics program as well, which has been awesome, where students are using usually block code to start, because Python can be C++. I don't know if they still do that, but we used to do that. But that's your world. So I can't wait to hear a review on that. Using those type of programs to code a robot and then to do designs and such on it. Our roller skating and math program is one that we've also used in the schools and programs where students build their own skates from scratch, which is more of a
Cool.
mechanical. Yeah, I always get that. The parents are like, can we get in that on that? But it's more of a mechanical and
Yeah.
physics approach to building and hands-on and kind of like understanding, the velocity, the acceleration, the momentum, understanding materials and surfaces, because all of those things go into the roll or the speed of the skate. And then the physical fitness part for all those physical fitness persons out there was actually learning how to skate, to roller skate, not inline skate, roller. It's really exciting if you get into the turns and the spins and all the other type of stuff, but also teaching students how to limit the fear that they may encounter when they don't know something. So usually, I don't know if you skate, I don't know if our friend over here skates,
Ari,
but
our producer today.
Ari, I put my mom on skates for one of the classes that we had, and she was doing well, but she was so nervous just to see people like on that wall, and it's literally like this mindset that they created for themselves, like, I'm gonna fall, right? So they're thinking about the worst thing that could happen. And so that's what we're getting students past, that this is like a physical fitness lesson, but also a mental fitness lesson that they can take into their lives while also learning the component
That is
of how it works.
so,
Yeah.
that's so perfect. Because it is like when you fear something, because that's what like math and science, like when you're learning these things, you are going to make mistakes. Sometimes it's not going to come to you right away, but it's like overcoming that feeling of frustration or that feeling of like, because that's what math is all about. It's like you keep trying to find the solution and you have to be able to have that almost like mental resilience, right? It's like overcoming a fear. And it's like such a great connection that you've created between physical fear and then the fear that you have at your desk when you're working maybe on a math test and you can't figure something out and you're on the clock. And like, I can totally understand like the connection of those feelings, those emotions. That's so smart. That's so good.
Thank you. No, it's been beautiful. And I think the authenticity of the programs that we have is that I knew that I wanted to do something that I love doing.
Yeah.
Like I know other people, everyone has their niche, and it's one thing, and I was thinking about different things. I'm like, okay, should I? I mean, we have a drone portion of the program as well that we work with, but there were certain things that I knew I wanted to be core because there were things that I enjoyed. And I knew that the people that enjoy those type of things would be attracted to the program. So roller skating is something I enjoy. I enjoy like the STEM portion of it. I enjoy building. And I'm like, these students that come in, like when we did the program out in Philadelphia, there were so many people that came in to do different portions of the program. Like they'll bring somebody in who was a chef, somebody in who's this and that. But we were the STEM personnel, and I never forget, we did the music, the coding, the roller skating and math portion at the end. That out of everything that these kids had, they were like, that?
This is it.
That was it. And it just made me so happy. Like,
Aw.
I wish I could share a testimonial, but maybe sooner than later. But that was a highlight for me because I'm like, wow, okay. These are the things that really move the students forward. Like, they're like, I didn't know this had a truck. I didn't know that there was a truck in it. And I didn't understand there was a pivot cup. And just, I didn't understand that, this is actually a bar that's made of steel versus a plastic one. Or depending on how long the plate is going to change your axis of rotation. That would actually be one that's balanced. So there's so many physics aspects of this that I think sometimes physics can feel a little abstract, like, okay, the velocity or the acceleration of this while it's moving down or the fly on the windshield, like, why does this matter? But when it's something that's applied to something that you do, and then you actually like get some type of program or problem that you need to solve, it seems so, as you said, like something closer to you. Like, it's not like that celebrity that's sitting all the way out there that's so far removed. It's like, oh, I did this. And it doesn't have to be the exact problem. So our whole thing is like, how do you understand a concept? So that it's not like everything is never going to be the exact same, but the conceptual understanding of it will always prove true because you know how to do it.
It's like you're creating like a framework for your thinking that you can then apply in different situations.
That's exactly what it is.
Cool. So I want to hear a little bit about what it was like for you growing up as a young person. You are in a profession that is very homogenous. It is not racially diverse. It's very male dominated. You kind of charted a course for yourself that is unusual as a young person. So what inspired you to do that? Explain.
I love that. The first word that popped out to me was transcendentalism. I mean, every time I think about that word, I think about the school that I went to, right? I went to the Harvey School. And the school, there was an honors English class I was a part of. And I'll never forget when we read Emerson and Thoreau, those authors just stood out, especially Emerson. Thoreau was, let me not say that. That might be a little controversial. Thoreau was he was under, right? He was under Emerson. He learned from Emerson, but Emerson's approach to always like creating this path that was never taken, to me, I remember doing a speech on it, or I just remember it just really like resonated with me. And as I said, at the age of 4, I started playing piano. To tell you the truth, I still play piano professionally. I play for events, for churches, for the whole work.
That's so cool.
Thank you. And what was powerful was I realized that I was the only female out of all of the girls that started that continued. I definitely do think I grew up as a tomboy, I would say. I was always hanging out with the guys. Like, I was the girl guy homie. I don't know how to call that, right? So and I still do have a lot of really great guy friends to this day. So that was kind of like a circle of trust and friendship for me, I would say. And then my dad always used to tell me that I needed to fix stuff. So I have a sister. It's just me and her. I think my father somewhere along the lines must have thought I was a boy. I kid you not. Like, I really think he did. And in his head, he was like, she's going to do all the stuff that I need her to do. But he used to tell me, like, you need to fix the printer. You need to fix the TV was acting crazy. I'd have to figure out the antennas and, the magnetism as to how far or whatever they need to go. If the printer wasn't working, I had to figure it out. And it wasn't a question of gender for him. It was just like, go and do it. So my dad was a very sink or swim type of person. I started learning to play piano classically from the age of 4. My piano teacher died when I was 12. And I never learned how to play by ear. And he would just say, well, we're going to these churches and you gonna play. And that was it. So it was always kind of the sink or swim. And I was just like, well, I'm going to swim. I'm not going to fall short over here. And so that for me, I think was something that always propelled me forward in the space of male dominated fields. When I was in 8th grade, I remember driving past something in the street and it was green sticking up out of the asphalt. And I'm like, what is that? And I saw this sign that said men working on the road. And I went online in 8th grade and I put in men working on the road and civil engineering pops up. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm going to be like. I already knew in 8th grade because of the exposure that I had. My mother is a doctor, nurse in practice, but my dad was into finance. And he used to bring us to his office sometimes if we didn't have a babysitter or whatever the case is. And we had to sit down and do math problems. Like, there was no question. Like, how everybody needs a tablet now, like, we didn't have that. that, right? It was you sit down and do this work. And I think because of that exposure as well, because of what was already, there was an expectation, of me. And those are the things I think that kind of had me into that role at such a young age. As I said before, it wasn't a gender thing. It was just like, oh, you figured it out. Like, you can do it. So just do it.
And I think to your dad's credit, he was like, she's capable of doing it. So just kind of like, do it. You are capable of doing it. So do it.
It's so funny you use the word capable. Like, I don't even think it was an option. It was just like, this needs to be done. And that was it. So when I got older and I started realizing that these fields were male dominated, I guess for me, I was already comforted because I had so many guy friends already.
So being in rooms where you were the only woman or one of the few women, it didn't bother you because you're like, I'm one of the guys anyway.
Yeah. and I was always like, so I would say empathetic because a lot of the work that I did was heavy construction. And so there would be a lot of males in the field. I've never been in a space, well, maybe one or two times out of 15 years, but there's always knuckleheads everywhere, right? But I was always respected where I was, It was like, oh, wow, she's about her business. Like, we're going to have to get this job done. Like, we're winning platinum ACEC projects, for prizes.
What does that mean?
The American Society of American Construction Engineering and some contracting or something like that. But we won I was on this project, that same Hunts Point project. We won these big awards because we finished stuff early and things like that. And I was the one, I don't want to say commanding, but because I was so comfortable once again with everybody, I'm like, hey, we need to get this done, and the work is getting done. It's always about respecting everybody. Sometimes I think engineers have this approach to like working with contractors or union folks or whichever. And it's kind of like, well, we are engineers. And so I don't know how much you all know, but I'm like, no, these folks have been doing their job for 20 plus years or 10 years or whichever. So it's just having that level of respect overall. And I think that those are kind of the things that got me into the spaces that I was in.
I mean, when you give someone respect, that gets reciprocated. It's like everyone should be doing that.
Yeah, that's just a little bit of kind of like how I got into the positions. And I found out what that green thing that was sticking up out of the asphalt was. It's galvanized steel, which has to be put into any road that you have, kind of like a structural reinforcement, about 3/4 of an inch away from the top of the asphalt pavement. So it was just so interesting that after being, 14 or 15 years of age and then getting back into the field after that, I'm like, oh, that's what that was. It has to be covered with epoxy. Yeah, so pretty exciting, yeah.
I want to ask you about mentorship. I've been asking all my guests about this. Is mentorship, has it been a part of your career journey, part of your story?
I would say yes, but I have some reservations. I always felt like because of the schools that I went to, because of my resume, a lot of opportunities that were kind of placed upon me were opportunities of like, you already know how to do this. So we want you to be the manager. We want you to be the person overseeing, but we need you to figure that out. And I kind of felt like the mentorship really wasn't there. And there were spaces where I would just be like, yeah, I'm not doing that, and I'll talk to other persons who were coaches or something of mine, and they would say like, don't take yourself out of the race. And I'm like, but there's nobody there. Why would you want to put me in a situation where I have to figure all of this stuff out on my own? I mean, yes, I'd have to do, the research and all of that, but I didn't feel like I had that person where I could just be like, hey, this is what I need. I have questions that I could kind of speak to on a regular basis after maybe how I saw people had mentorship, if you would. So that was a little rough, I would think. Like, there was the opportunity that came up and these folks were like, yeah, oh, you went to Hopkins, you working for this company. Like, yeah, we need a manager to oversee the whole entire geotech. And I'm like, no. So those kind of things kind of threw me for a loop. Like, I guess as a natural leader, without having some of the other leaders to speak to, I guess, in the space of comfortability that I would like, that can be a little scary for me. So sometimes I just kind of back away from that.
I'm curious. So can you describe the specific situation where you felt, I guess it sounds like you felt like isolated in a way. You were expected to deliver without guidance.
Without guidance. So a few. There was an opportunity that I was looking at out in Rochester. This company was a subcontractor of the prime company that I was working for. They were paying much more than the company I was working for at the time, which was kind of interesting to me, but maybe because they were a smaller company. Anyway, great folks, really great time going out there. They flew me out for the interview and everything. And they're like, hey, we want you to come on board. And I'm like, okay, cool. What position do you have in mind? Like, oh, we want you project manager overseeing, like 10 people or so. And I'm like, y'all know I have about 2 years of experience in this field, right? Like, yeah, but you work with this and that. And I'm like, so who am I going to be, under? And it was like the person who was so high that you couldn't reach. And I just kind of felt like, why does this keep happening to me? And that was just one company. Another company that was actually in New York at the time that I guess was undergoing a few changes as well. They wanted me to also manage their whole group. And I just, not that I was putting myself down, but I know that when I get into those type of spaces, I want to be able to be gleaning from someone that has that knowledge and has worked in that space for a long time versus have just being on the Google or pulling from the books and the
you
resources.
Feel like you weren't being set up for success.
That's what it is. Thank you. That's the best.
You felt like you were being presented with opportunities. However, they were kind of like setting you up for high chance of potential failure, like because they weren't giving you enough.
The resources weren't really there.
The resources weren't there.
For some people, they would go ahead and take that limb, check. And I was just like, yeah, I felt like that wasn't something I wanted to do so early in my career. So that was a little scary for me. And I didn't appreciate that.
But also good for you for knowing what was best for you. And then acting on that. Yeah. No,
because sometimes I think you could beat yourself up and you're like, I should, everybody's like, take the opportunities, it's the way that you can. And I'm like, this field.
That's your intuition and your gut.
Could be that too.
Following that.
And just speaking to that $1.6 billion project that I was on, it's still we drove on the way. It's amazing. Just talking about that project really quickly. That project, I started in 2017, 2 years in while I was working at the company I was working at the time. And it was talking about mentorship. So there we go. Here's the mentor. The lady who was there, can't mention her name, but she was my boss. And I had a boss who was above her and he was a male. Nothing wrong with the males. But because she was a female and because she understood she was there for about 16 years. I was 2 years. And then also being from the Northeast Bronx. So that's closer to Westchester. But the project is in the South Bronx, right? And at the time, in 2017, they had the highest asthma rate in the nation because all the trucks were coming into the neighborhood to get back into Hunts Point. And so a lot of diesel emission fuels kind of being released in the air. And so, of course, affecting the respiratory aspects for all of the residents there, which was very sad. But what I thought was amazing was that I came to that company at that time to be a key person in the construction after 20 years of them rallying about making this happen. 20 years in, coming into the company, and then my female mentor and boss saying, I want you to take lead on this project. I had experience in Germany and so on and so forth, but actually being on that job in that particular space for 2 years. That to me, and I tell her all the time, it's so funny. I brought all of the students that we had over to the company she's working at now. This past summer, 2024. And I was just telling them because this was a project that put me on the map. Talking about mentorship again, my mom at the time, I felt like, I don't know about this company. And she's like, hang on in there, just, and that was the year, that was the breakthrough year. It took me on American Science Civil Engineers, 2020 New Faces, just different opportunities with the New York Stock Exchange and some of the other folks that were a part of leadership.
You're breezing through these really huge accomplishments, by the way. You're just...
Yeah, but these were some of the opportunities that awarded me because of that mentorship. So I have to say, that's why I'm like, when I think about mentorship and when I think about kind of my journey, I'm like, oh, there were some parts where it was me and trying to figure out the nuances around certain things. And then there was me and then other mentors that were like, she needs to have the opportunity. And I felt like I could talk to she was a great great mentor. So I can speak to her, say, hey, I'm thinking about this. What are your thoughts? How do I do this? And so if I have that free dialogue, most definitely, like, I'm not backing down from an opportunity. But for me in those spaces, if I felt like I did not, because I already had gone through those situations where I didn't have the mentorship, I felt like, wow.
Yeah. So like what I'm hearing is like, it's not enough to just present the opportunity to someone, because like if you don't set them up for success, you just give them the title, you give them, this is your remit, this is your responsibility, and you give them all of this. That's not the same thing as true mentorship. And true support of someone's career is to give them the resources, the support, the communication that is needed to set them up for success in that role that can take them to the next level. And that's what your mentor did for you in that project that was so pivotal for your carear.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Cool.
Totally agree. Yep.
I want to talk about what you're really excited about. What are you most excited about right now? Yeah, with your organization.
Well, one of the major things that we're doing, especially for this quarter, so October, September into December, really, so Q4, we are highlighting the strength of boldness, the strength of confidence, and the strength of identity of students, individuals through music. So, and it's a sticker, music is math. Okay, I'll just calm down. So this is our music sticker, music and math sticker book series. And basically what it does, we have a guitarist in here as well, Mr. Ari. Basically what it does is goes into like notes and their counts. So we're thinking about like notes as and measures as a unit of time, right? So for all I'm thinking about differential equations over here, mercy, position functions and acceleration functions. But yeah, a measurement of time, F of T, if anybody remembers those things. But the whole point is, you hear me talking about differential equations and Calc 1 and 2, but these are the things that set you up for that, right? So for all of my musicians out there, if you can see this or you can hear this, just kind of think a half note minus what equals a quarter note. So a half note we know gets 2 counts, minus what equals a quarter note gets 1 count, right? So just 2 minus what equals 1. 1, right? A quarter note. Let's see. A whole note gets 4 counts. A whole note divided by what equals 1? Or 4 divided by what equals 1? 4, right? So then we'll put in the blank a whole note. And so that's just one portion of the book. The book then goes into like space notes and line notes. So then you also learn how to play the piano or any type of instrument, because theory is key for all of that. Concepts again. Bass line, trying to think about a few other things. And then there, of course, this is one of my favorite parts. I'm going to kind of go into that. One of my favorite parts is the time signatures, right? Which is literally a fraction, which is just saying that there are 2 beats in each measure, 2 measures of time or counts in each section of your music. There's one more. And then if you like to color, for all the young ones out there, just looking at the fraction as a part of a whole. So really just looking at music kind of like as this mathematical equation, which is fun for anyone who's beginning music or trying to get a deeper understanding in math and its practicalities. This was a download, I would say, for me that I've definitely earnestly prayed for. And I believe that it is taking the world by storm. So you want to go ahead. And get your copy.
Where do we get a copy? Where can we get this?
At Daley, Daley, Smith, Inc.com, DaleySmithInc.com. It is really just the way that we are allowing, as we spoke about diversity, diversifying that science, tech, engineering mindset through music, not only just here in the New York City area, but all over the world, because it is available all over the world. It's an electronic copy as well as a hard copy for you, paperback. But this is one of our, I would say, most exciting projects right now, especially for this quarter. Seeing students get into piano or music and mathematics through it has definitely been invigorating. I would say I have mothers and fathers, grandparents calling me up like, yeah, my child or whoever, they're enjoying this book and they're ready to get started. They're going to start this and start that. And they're usually like parents that, either have their doctorate in, music or math, or they're in some type of field around that. But the schools now are basically the next spaces we're going to in terms of like making this something mandatory, whether it's for enrichment or different types of programs like that. When I met Cass at the e-commerce event, I'm like, Cass, look, I need to understand this e-commerce as to how we can can navigate this platform because this needs to be translated into courses and the whole work as to how, we can reach folks internationally as well. So that's one of my favorite projects that's taking over by storm, and you want to be a part of that movement.
And other than, obviously purchasing this book, I have a lot of people that follow me that are maybe working at corporations, e-commerce companies, tech platforms. I have partners at different companies. So on a company level, they want to support your mission. They want to support your nonprofit. How does that conversation start? Should they reach out to you? How do you work with companies, like private companies?
So we've worked with private companies before. They'll reach out. There might be a specific portion or a school that they'd want to work with, organization that they're like, hey, we want to make sure that we help, 100 students or 1,000 students, with maybe the drone program or the coding program. And we'll make sure that, that's a part of the work that they support. Of course, your logo, then all of that gets put on our website. And we'll also send something over to you, just sharing with you the work that you have been able to support and the students that you, out of the 500,000 that you are helping to teach them and the science, tech, engineering, and mathematic fields, even e-commerce, in a light that they can understand. And what I think is beautiful about this is upon working with larger companies, we start to understand a little bit of the dynamic of what they're looking for the future, right? And the whole point is we want students to be able to be set up, say, for the future. So if a company is like, hey, we need somebody that understands this specific, name something in e-commerce, please. That's like a hot button that people need to know about, that the future needs.
Omnichannel selling.
Okay, yeah. Omnichannel selling. Whew, that sounds great, right? So say we need to have a student understand how omnichannel selling works, right? And they need to be an expert in that specific field, right? That's something that can be, I say, translated into some type of program or some type of mentorship as well. So that maybe when that student finishes college, you don't have to look for anybody, right? This is what I call the pipeline effect, wherein students are going through kind of like this pipeline to specifically fit the need of that company. And now you have somebody that you don't have to ramp up and train and do all of that because you've been doing that from the college or the high school level. Now you are making more money, fulfilling the bottom line, and also impacting not only just a student, but a generation because of your time and efforts.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing what you're most excited about.
Yeah.
I'm really excited also because you brought your mom in today.
I did.
So we're going to take a quick break to set up another mic, another chair, and then we get to meet your mom.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you, Kath. And thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for the opportunity. It really has been a great, great time meeting you. You're just so bubbly, so kind.
Aw.
And just want to say thank you for this podcast, for all of you all listening. Kath is an amazing person and continue to support the work that she's doing. Thank you.